Welcome everyone to our new show called The Quad. The Quad is a show that will bring you women's perspectives from Israel. This is a show that we've been talking about for a long time, but we actually felt that this week, this was a time to start, to show you our unique perspective, hands-on, what's going on the ground here in Israel. And I'm blessed to be accompanied by some very talented and very good women here on the show. My friend Emily Schrader, who is a human rights activist and a journalist, Ashira Solomon, a political moderator, and my good friend Vivian Bercovici, who unfortunately is not with us. She is in Canada. She got stuck there, but she is on our show. And she is the former Canadian ambassador to Israel and the founder of the State of Tel Aviv podcast. Ladies, it's been quite a week. I feel like my life before Shabbat was a different world. And now we're in a different reality. And I don't think I'm the only one who feels this way. There's been a lot of lows this week. And I moved here with my husband. This was before we had kids, during the second Intifada. It was March 2001. And buses were blowing up in Jerusalem and in cafes. And I feel worse now. And I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because I think that the scenes that we've seen are something that we never imagined would happen on our doorstep. This is something that we saw in Boko Haram and in ISIS in Afghanistan and Holocaust scenes. Emily, how's your week been?
I mean, it's hard to put into words. Of course, I think you guys are probably feeling the same. But the initial shock of what happened was upsetting. But in the coming days, the days that followed the initial attack on October 7th, it's gotten actually worse because we've seen more and more stories coming from survivors. The casualty count has gone up over 1,300 now, over 100 hostages. I mean, it's insanity. Like, if someone had told me that this would happen, I wouldn't have believed it. I would have thought it was like a conspiracy rumor started by, I don't know, the Islamic Republic of Iran or something like that. But the nightmare is real. And for the first 2 days, I remember I woke up thinking it didn't happen.
I had exactly the same feeling. I woke up on Sunday morning hoping it had been a bad nightmare. It had been a nightmare. Yeah. I've never had that feeling before.
Me either. And I've seen terrorist attacks happen in Israel. I've been around some very, very traumatic scenes.
Also, you live in Tel Aviv, which means you've been under rocket fire.
Yeah.
For the best part of your time.
That's how I was woken up. I was woken up by rocket fire on the first
Shabbat.
day. Yep. On Saturday.
So was I.
And by the time that happened, all hell had broken loose in the South already. So I picked up my phone. I had like hundreds of messages of people, news alerts, and friends asking what's going on and where I am. And very, very chaotic and stressful. It took a couple hours just to even understand what happened. And then the following day, in the multiple barrages of rockets that hit Tel Aviv, the one that actually had a direct hit in Tel Aviv was downstairs from my apartment.
You're kidding me.
And that was like...
Wait, in your building? On your building?
My block.
In your block?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Tell us
a shelter in your building? Yeah, so I was in the bomb shelter. Of course, whenever there's a rocket siren, I've been in the bomb shelter. And, you know, even in previous operations, I've been under rocket fire before. And you hear the boom from the Iron Dome, like shooting down the rockets from Gaza. But what was interesting about this and much more scary is, like, first of all, the boom was like tremendous. I would have, if I didn't know it was a rocket, I would have thought it was an earthquake. Like the whole ground shook. Wow. And initially I thought that my building was hit, at least partially, because of how severe the shaking was and how loud the noise was. And waited a couple minutes in the bomb shelter, as, you know, they tell us to do. And then I walked out on the balcony to see if I could see what was hit. I looked at the street and the entire neighborhood was smoky. The entire neighborhood. And you could smell gunpowder from my balcony. I had like the window open.
What floor do you live on?
4th floor.
Oh.
Yeah.
Tell me, was anybody hurt?
Yeah, there were actually 3 people who were injured in that attack. And I after the coast was clear, you know, I walked down to see where it had happened. And that's when I saw around the corner it had hit. And, you know, emergency services were already coming. There was someone who was trapped under the building that collapsed. I'm pretty sure that no one died in that attack. I didn't get an update, but 3 people were injured. And when I walked down and a couple other residents from that block, the second wave of rockets came. So people had started to come out. Wow. Then the sirens went off again, and all of us just booked it back to the bomb shelter.
And tell me something, because this is something that I've had a lot of phone calls about. Was the bomb shelter in your building prepared? Did it have electricity? Because I've been getting a lot of phone calls of people who are running to public bomb shelters or even bomb shelters in buildings, and people have filled it up with their crap instead of being able to be there.
Yeah. No, I mean, my bomb shelter is my bedroom. So in that sense, I'm kind of lucky.
Oh, good. So you can actually sleep and close the door.
Yeah, if need be, yeah.
Oh, my God. Ashira, when did you move to Israel?
I moved to Israel about a year and 3 months ago.
Okay. Is this your first war or your second war?
This is my first war. I have lived in Israel. This is my third time living in Israel, but this is the first time there was a war while I'm living in Israel.
And you're from California?
California, yes.
So tell me about your week.
So it's been difficult to say the least. And I was actually in Tel Aviv, and I'm never in Tel Aviv for Shabbat. I'm very much a Jerusalem girl, but a friend said, let's go and do Simchat Torah in Tel Aviv. So I said, okay. I woke up to 2 booms, and I didn't know what they were. I was like, is there construction? Is it an earthquake?
You never know in Tel Aviv. It's
Yeah.
constant construction.
Yeah, I didn't know, and I'm not used to it. So
you wouldn't even recognize it.
I didn't even recognize it. And my other friends were like, Ashira, there was a bomb. We need to run to the stairwell. And I'm like, what's going on? So I turn on my phone. We're getting all the alerts. My friends decide to walk to the shul. I'm terrified.
They're still going to shul at this point?
They walk to the shul.
Synagogue.
The synagogue, yes. And I was like, I'm not leaving the Airbnb we were at. And I was calling my parents and I was calling friends because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know.
Well, you were smart to call your parents, because if they would have seen this on TV and not know where you were.
Yeah. And as I turned on my phone, my youngest sister, she's texting me, SOS, are you okay? Da, da, da. And I'm like, yes, I'm fine. So it was a very scary situation. I waited in the Airbnb all day for Shabbat, and my friends went out. They felt safe to walk. I did not. And then I had to take a taxi to Jerusalem. And I'm never scared to take a taxi. You know, here in Israel, we have a very diverse community, but every driver was an Arab. And I was so scared because I was reading that they're taking hostages and kidnapping.
Not only that, they dressed up as police, they dressed up as IDF soldiers. So how do you know?
Yes.
How do you know?
By the third, I had canceled like 3 rides because I was really waiting for like a Jewish name to pop up. And then I just said, you know what? I just have to take the risk because I needed to get out of Tel Aviv. And I got to Jerusalem, and I really haven't left my house since. It's been really hard for my parents. They don't understand why I'm choosing to stay in Israel, to stand with Israel, to not leave, to not, have these attacks make us fear and leave our land. And so my father actually called me this morning. And he said, listen, I'm having nightmares and I'm stressed. And he just got out of surgery on Friday.
Oh.
And he said, why won't you come home? And I said, I can't. I have to stay here. I cannot allow them to win. I'm going to stay and stand. Just as I stand when we're blessed as a nation, I have to stand with the nation when we're in pain.
That's incredible, Ashira.
So it's been difficult.
So like you too, I also woke up. My kids actually woke me up with the siren in Jerusalem. And as opposed to Tel Aviv, there's barely any sirens in Jerusalem.
Yeah, it's not common.
It's not common because we have 40% Arab population here. And of course, the Dome of the Rock. They don't really...
Not that they care about firing rockets at their own holy sites or killing their own people. They
No.
killed 4 Arabs in the first wave of attacks.
Absolutely. And they've kidnapped a few. But I think to throw a rocket onto the Dome of the Rock, they would not be popular in the Muslim world. And so I think they avoided, even though, unfortunately, a few days after the first attacks, they threw a rocket and it fell on the mosque of Abu Ghosh. Abu Ghosh is an Arab village next to Jerusalem, on the entrance of Jerusalem. The mayor is a good friend of mine, Salim Jabel.
Yeah.
And I called him up and I said, what's going on? They're a wonderful neighboring town of Jerusalem. And yes, so a missile fell on a mosque. But put that aside, I woke up. I didn't know what was going on. It was Simchat Torah. That day, my biggest problem was that my husband actually was in hospital with his father because his father had a life-threatening infection. So my husband decided to stay Shabbat to get a hotel in Hadassah Hospital. And that was already our trauma, that my father-in-law was in hospital, that it was critical, that my husband wasn't with us for Simchat Torah. My 4 kids were at home. Little did I know that what I thought was my worst problem, thankfully my father-in-law's better. We ran to the shelter, 5 sirens, never happens in Jerusalem. And at that point, even though I'm Shomeret Shabbat, I'm like, God, you'll forgive me for this one.
Same. That's what I said. I
opened up
opened
my
my
phone.
phone.
Nefesh.
Yeah.
Love Nefesh. I opened up my phone, and I realized that Israel was at war. And then I put on the news, and this is the worst thing, and I'll never forget this for the rest of my life. The people from Be'eri, the people from these kibbutzes in the south, were calling the TV to say, we are in our houses, we are stuck here, the terrorists are outside, we don't know what to do, nobody's coming to help. Now, this is a country that you call an ambulance, and it comes in 60 seconds.
Right.
So I think that for the first 2 days, at least me, I mean, we've gone through like a roller coaster of feelings here, but for the first 2 days, disbelief, this could happen to us.
Yep.
And in this way.
Yes.
Yep. I've been in absolute shock. And, the stories that are coming out in the aftermath are just making it even more traumatic. I mean, I can't even imagine being in that position where you have it. And I saw also what you saw, I think, the interviews, people calling onto TV because they weren't able to, I don't know, the RE or other
traumatic.
security wasn't able to get. It was traumatic to listen to. I can't even imagine being in that position. And you mentioned Kibbutz Be'eri. I think it's important also to explain what we found out about what happened at Kibbutz Be'eri just yesterday, I think, was when the news really came out about, 12% of their entire population was murdered.
Whole families.
They burned some of them alive. They tied children together and tortured them. And they murdered at least, the reports say, at least 40 babies. They said some of them, as well as some of the adults, were decapitated. I mean, it's not just an attack. It's not just cruelty. It's the barbarity. It's like the depraved
Savagery, atrocities.
Yeah.
And every day gets worse. I just feel that every day gets, what we find out,
Yep.
it gets worse every day. And I can't believe we're living in where we're living, in our country, as a sovereign land. And we're seeing scenes from the Shoah. I know this bothers some people, and I'm not saying this is the scale of the Shoah, God forbid.
Yeah.
But the scenes of children hiding in closets for 13 hours while their parents are murdered outside, that's Shoah. The kids who went to a music concert running and people shooting them in the back like barrels, like ducks in a barrel, that's Shoah.
Yeah.
Not only that, the police came and the terrorists dressed as police came and they blocked roads. I mean, they knew what they were doing with this music festival. It was pre-orchestrated, of course, with the support of Iran.
Absolutely. Premeditated. 50.
I think we also need to beg the question, like, Israel, we have the strongest intelligence in the world. How did this happen? Like, where were the soldiers? Where were the police officers? Why did it take so long? Like you said, if you call an ambulance, it comes in 60 seconds. It's like, what happened? What was the failure?
We have a border.
Yeah.
Left, and this is what a lot of people don't seem to understand. We left Gaza in 2005, right? They are sovereign. We have a border. Where were we that morning?
Yes,
Were we not protecting the border? We are the startup nation. We have the best cybersecurity in the world, the best technology in the world, the best personal security in the world. I think that was the disbelief of the first 48 hours.
Right.
Yeah. And still, we don't really have a clear picture still of what happened. And I know Israel's focused right now on targeting Hamas, ensuring that there isn't further attacks, whether from the north with Hezbollah or from Hamas or Islamic Jihad in Gaza. But we still don't know. We don't have all the answers, and that's an incredibly uncomfortable place to be.
And I think you're 100% right. And I think we need to I know this sounds terrible, I think we need to shelve that until we get over it.
Yeah.
And the day after, those are the days of the reckoning. What happened here? But we can't focus on being angry at each other right now. We need to focus on getting our people back, our hostages home, protecting our soldiers, limiting the casualties of our soldiers if there's going to be a ground invasion, and basically helping the country become more resilient. I don't know what else at this point we can do.
I mean, I think that the response from the international community so far has been pretty supportive.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that really bothers me about it is that it's nice that you have, celebrities and world leaders who are expressing solidarity with Israel. But in a way, I'm kind of frustrated because, we've been saying these things about Hamas for how long? We've been warning the world about this issue for how long? And
Decades.
Nobody cared. But now that there are dead Jews, now that there are children who have been kidnapped, Now you're upset about it. Like it's always easy to mourn when you don't actually have to take an action to stop something.
Right. It's even more than that. This is the 5th war we've had with Gaza. And every single time when we've wanted to uproot the terrorist infrastructure, the world has said, no. We can't see the images of the destruction in Gaza, so stop. And so we've bought quiet for another year and then again. And the people who have been suffering for 16 years have been the residents of the south of this country. And maybe we should look in the mirror and say, well, I was in Jerusalem, you were in Tel Aviv. It didn't affect us. Our children were not growing up with sirens every month the way that they were over there. Ashira, how do you see this from a perspective of a new immigrant?
This is terrible. And I think to your point where you said we have more international community supporting, we also still have the international community questioning. They're saying news outlets are coming out and saying, well, we support Israel but responding in an appropriate, a proportionate amount. Like, what is proportionate? So they took they beheaded 40 babies. So what? We only take 30?
No, it's even worse now, Ashira, because now they're saying, well, what's the evidence?
Yeah.
They beheaded 40 babies. Okay, my question is this. Does it matter if they were beheaded or burnt alive or tortured or put in cages and then tortured? Does that make a difference to your sympathy towards us?
Yes,
whether they're beheaded or not beheaded? These questions to me are disgraceful.
And proving, like we were speaking about earlier, proving that how do we know that women got raped?
Yes, that was another
show me the proof.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you want? A pap smear in Gaza? What do you want?
And then even people are questioning, are there really hostages? Did they really take 100 hostages?
Yeah, no, they went voluntarily.
Yes, so they just, walked over because they wanted to see the beaches in Gaza.
They have this video that was shared with I think it was an 85-year-old grandmother that they kidnapped.
With a wheelchair, the one in the wheelchair?
Yeah, the one in the wheelchair.
With dementia?
And then they put the gun over in her lap.
They made her take a photo with one of the terrorists, making the V sign.
A woman
They
with
had this
dementia.
video of her. They're parading her, driving through the streets of Gaza, and people are cheering. This is another thing that really upsets me is that a lot of people are like, well, not all Palestinians. Yes, it's true. Not all Palestinians. But there are enough of them that support this action. There were celebrations throughout the West Bank. There were celebrations throughout Gaza. And I actually feel extra sorry for the Palestinians who really do want a peaceful solution and just want to live in peace. But the reality is that far too many of the Palestinians, as in tens of thousands, support the actions of Hamas.
And even worse, the Palestinians in the diaspora are doing demonstrations.
Oh, they're having huge
in
parades
solidarity
and concerts.
and basically, chanting from the river to the sea. They're basically having demonstrations pro-genocide. That's what they're doing.
Yeah,
that's right. And I made a video about this also, when it comes to the protesting issue, you can protest about Palestine. It's fine to be pro-Palestinian.
Absolutely.
It's fine to have, to focus on the human rights of the Palestinians. But to do so within 24 hours, which they did, within 24 hours of a massacre, of an attempted genocide of civilians is madness.
Well,
it's absolute madness.
They're justifying it like organizations like Black Lives Matter coming out saying we stand in solidarity with them because they have suffered 57 years of oppression, that Israel is a colonial power, an apartheid state, and we have parallels with the Black community and a terrorist group. This is insane. Are you kidding me? There are no parallels between Black Americans and Hamas at all. We should not be showing any sympathy to a terrorist group. And I want to echo the words that Amari Stoudemire said to BLM, that you are cowards. I will refrain from the curse words he had to say.
He was priceless,
yes.
by the way.
And I do want to urge Black Americans that we have parallels with the Jewish community. We have parallels with the state of Israel. That's who we have a parallel with. We have similar stories. That's who we need to stand with the Jewish people, unite with them just as we stood with them and they stood with us during civil rights movement. Yeah. Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization, and it's ran by 4 women who are queer, which that doesn't matter. But I don't think you could walk into Gaza as 4 queer women and Hamas would be like, welcome, we love you.
Do they even know that they would be strung up by their thumbs if they were in Gaza as queer women? Do they know that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what you want to stand with. So I think ludicrous and despicable.
I mean, in general, we've had a problem for a while in the extreme left with, bizarre allies of the Palestinians, including from the LGBTQ community, that for some reason think that they somehow have a shared struggle with the Palestinians, which is completely illogical because, of all the societies in the world, I mean, according to Pew, 93% of Palestinians are completely opposed to homosexuality, as in they think it should be illegal and they should be in prison or executed for it.
They run one of the signs,
homophobic societies in the world.
Queers for Palestine.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
I
go to Gaza.
I love the meme that I saw once, queers for Palestine is like chickens for KFC.
Yes.
That's the best way to describe it. And in terms of Asbara, Emily, because you're really on the front lines of this, how do you just said that we have gotten sympathy. Do you feel the mood is shifting? Because I feel it's beginning to. And the question is, what do we do about it?
Yeah, I mean, I do think just in the last day or two that things have started to shift a little bit. There's been more criticism, as you mentioned, or, questions, the validity of different claims.
And what do you say about that Israel is committing genocide now?
Yeah, so this is part of the whole campaign that's being launched against Israel. And I think it kind of ties into what I mentioned before, that people love to feel sorry for Jews in retrospect. 6 million died in the Holocaust. How sad. Let's remember the Holocaust.
There's a fantastic book that everybody should read called Everybody Loves Dead Jews.
Yeah, I read it. It's a good one.
It's a great book talking about how they can memorialize us, make a museum about us, dead Jews. They love that. But when we're right here and now, they can't feel sympathy.
Yeah, and when we have to defend ourselves, when Israel has to defend themselves, that's when they say, oh, no, don't do that. Exercise restraint.
So how, I beg the question, so what is the appropriate response to how Israel should defend themselves? So we get attacked, there's a big, huge terror attack, and what are we supposed to say? I mean, ceasefire.
I think it's...
Sorry, we're the power, so, we'll let you be.
Yeah, I will, military superiority doesn't equal moral inferiority and vice versa.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think we need to really emphasize the point that, the behavior of Hamas, the things that they did, it wasn't a strategic military objective. Okay, this wasn't a campaign to take, not that it would be okay either, but this wasn't a campaign to take over territory. They weren't coming into Israel to say, oh, that's our land and we're going to free Palestine. That wasn't the point. It wasn't even the goal. Their goal literally was to murder civilians.
Exactly.
I follow their channels on Telegram, the Hamas, also Hezbollah, and I saw the content that they were putting out in real time. It wasn't them going to fight against Israeli soldiers.
Let's take over these two kibbutzim and we're going to settle them. No.
Yeah. They were showing morbid, disgusting, barbaric murders and celebrating it. They were mocking the victims. They were showing dead bodies. I mean, it's just horrific. Absolutely horrific cruelty. They were even shooting pets. They were even shooting people's animals. It's just the barbarity is unlike anything I've ever seen, except perhaps ISIS.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, what the whole world needs to understand. And I had an interview yesterday and someone said, oh, well, Israelis don't care about the fact that hundreds of Palestinians are dying. I think it's a tragedy. I think it's absolutely awful. And I don't know a single Israeli who doesn't.
That's exactly
But that doesn't mean we should apologize for rooting out Hamas, because that's what needs to be done, not only for us, but for the entire world, because it's not just about us now. This isn't just coming from Hamas. It's coming from the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they want to expand this.
And I don't think the international community understands that Hamas uses civilians as human shields.
Yes, which is a war crime.
Yes, so it's not that Israel's going in and saying we want to kill innocent children and women. These are their shields. They tell them when Israel warns them, hey, we're going to take out this building, everyone leave, they tell them to stay. That's the reality of the situation. They tell them to stay.
They use their people. They have no value for life, of course, not for us, but certainly not even for their own children. But the question is going to be, how does Israel continue a campaign to dismantle this terrible I've been calling them now for 3 days, the long arm of Iran, because that's exactly what they are. And it is, as you quite rightly said, Emily, it's not just a threat for us. We're just the first stop on their tour.
Yep, right.
And they say it. And in the Hamas charter, it doesn't just say we're going to destroy Israel. They want to kill all the Jews.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, the Christian world is next.
Yeah.
They're not sparing anybody. They have huge ambitions. Hamas is their puppet, as is Hezbollah in the north. But now we're going to go in there and we're going to be faced with horrific scenes of war on the TV and bleeding children, which, like you're quite right, there's not one Israeli who will celebrate an innocent getting killed or injured. Not one Israeli.
Not one.
For us, we want to minimize civilian casualties. For them, that's their goal.
Yes.
But in the end, the images on TV is what's going to come out. And the question is, how do we get the job done?
I think Israel needs to, well, not just Israel, the international community needs to work with Israel. And I think that there need to be new opportunities opened up for Palestinians to, even if temporarily, get out. Because Israel is calling the buildings ahead of time. They're giving advance notice before they bomb any of the sites.
Egypt's not going to take
Well,
them.
but that's
Jordan's not
what
gonna
they
take
need to
them.
pressure Egypt
Exactly.
to do so,
Maybe
or
that-
the rest of the Arab world.
Well,
it's not right. I mean, we do have to protect the civilians as much as we can, and
Right.
Israel does a lot, but we can't do it alone.
Right.
And we need the rest of the world's help to take out Hamas for everyone's sake. By the way, also the Palestinians in Gaza. They've been
Right.
suffering
They're
for
miserable.
years under Hamas.
They're
Right.
miserable. And you're quite right. Because look, when we have the war between Russia and Ukraine, do you know how many European countries took
Opened their
in
doors?
Ukrainian refugees? By the way, we
Austria,
also
Poland.
did.
Yes.
The Syrian war. You know how many Syrians there are in Europe? So why is it that Egypt, that borders Gaza, something that people don't know, they talk about an open-air prison. They have two borders, one with us, one with Egypt. They're fighting us. They attacked us. They started war with us. They didn't start war with Egypt.
Yep.
Why can't they be the country to open a humanitarian corridor? Of course, they've got to filter out to make sure that it's not terrorists coming in and it's not our hostages coming in.
Yep.
We can help them with that. But if people are talking about humanitarian aid, why are they asking us, the country that's just been attacked? Are we supposed
right.
to be facilitating our butchers to continue to butcher us?
Right.
Have people gone crazy? I mean, where are these double standards coming from, Emily?
I mean, I think a core element of it is anti-Semitism. It's true that Israel is held, because it's a Jewish state, because actually it's also the only true democracy in the region, it's held to a different standard. It's held to the standard of, democracies who have existed for hundreds of years, like the United States or Canada. And, while Israel, I believe, shares those values, Israel's a very young country. And on top of all of that, Israel deals with crazy existential threats that none of those countries deal with.
Ever
Not
did.
to mention non-state actors.
Exactly.
So
We've built this country fighting with one hand and building with the other.
That's right.
And we've turned it into a technological superpower. And we've resolved our own refugee crisis after the Second World War. And on top of that, we're the aggressors when our hand is outstretched in peace, including with the Palestinians. What I don't get, and this is something, I've had a lot of panels where the Palestinian ambassador to the UK or here or there comes on the panel. These people are Fatah. These people were themselves killed by Hamas when Hamas got into power. So I find it...
after they were democratically elected, the
Hamas-
people of Gaza chose Hamas, and then they murdered their political rivals.
They murdered the political rivals, and the political rivals, which is Fatah, they hate each other more than they hate us,
Right.
are now going around the world defending this. What are we supposed to do about this?
I think that from our perspective, the best way to do it is to continue to create content, to continue to be outspoken and have our faces leading and be educating the population, because so many people are miseducated and disinformed.
Non-educated whatsoever.
Like non-educated at all, and everyone has an opinion about the region and don't know anything about the region. So I think we need to start with education. I know Emily's doing a great job as a journalist and on social media and with your company. But as far as the government goes, I really have a lack of trust in government right now, and I really have a lack of faith in what they're going to do and how they're going to
in terms of security or in terms of asbara, of explaining to the world, where's your loss of faith?
in both.
That's sad.
Yeah, I really have. Right now, I just have a huge loss in faith in them. So I think it's going to take us civilians, us people on the ground, civil society, to use our own voices, to raise our own voices, to have open dialogue, to have these conversations, to really make change and impact.
Okay, I want to move over to a segment that Emily and I have been thinking about for a long time. When about a year ago, we thought, why don't we do kind of mean tweets type of movie? Remember that, Emily?
There's no shortage. If you're a woman and you speak about anything Jewish or Israel online,
if you're a woman and an outspoken Zionist, the misogyny, right?
Yeah,
is incredible. But because of where we're at right now, I wanted us to talk about, I want to call it A-hole of the week. Because we want to keep it clean, guys. Emily, give me one example of something where you're like, what?
you're an a-hole.
Yes, I've got about 5. So
I know it's hard to cut down.
It's hard to pick.
Yeah.
The worst example of that you've had.
I mean, I don't know if it's the worst example, but the first thing that comes to mind is the scenes that we've seen on campuses. We spoke very briefly about it a few minutes ago, but some of these protests, these demonstrations that are supposedly pro-Palestinian are appalling, not just because of the timing, but, in one instance, there was a video from Brooklyn College in New York.
Yeah.
And the Jewish students and allies held a memorial service for the victims of terror. I think it was the day after, or maybe 2 days after the initial attack.
Yeah.
And you can see in the video that there are anti-Israel demonstrators screaming at them. Some of them are saying this is justified, this was justified. Others are saying, free Palestine. And this isn't like a pro-Israel campaign versus an anti-Israel campaign. This is a memorial service for
massacred
civilian victims, including children, of terrorism. And so what are you saying with that? Are you saying that is what the Palestinian cause is? Because that's the message that you're sending when you protest a memorial.
And they know the message that they're sending. That's what they're saying.
But you know what? I've been really pleasantly surprised how many decent Palestinians have come out disavowing themselves from this. Like, for example, Naz Daily, who is a massive influencer.
Not Palestinian. He's Israeli first now.
He wrote a very interesting, very moving message saying, I've always had this kind of dual identity, Israeli-Palestinian and Palestinian-Israeli, and now I'm disavowing this Palestinian. They don't stand for me, not in my name.
Yeah.
And like him, I've seen about another 3 or 4. Have you seen this? Or this is like a minority?
I mean, I can't speak for Palestinians. Also, we have to remember that Palestinians in Gaza don't have a lot of freedom.
No,
they're in
no
a tremendously dangerous position. But yeah, I've seen a lot of especially Arab Israelis, I've seen a lot of them speaking out against this. Lucia Harish, who's a very respected journalist here, a Muslim Israeli herself. She had a monologue on one of Israel's most popular channels, did the whole thing in English, which was unusual, about how this is a universal cause. This isn't something Jewish. This isn't something Arab. This is about humanity.
Humanity, that's it.
And she stated herself, all of us are united against,
Against what?
No, I'm upset.
No, I'm sorry.
Are united against the horrific scenes that we saw, and that it threatens every single one of us. And as I mentioned earlier, in the initial wave of rockets, there were 4 Bedouin Israelis who were killed. In almost every wave of attacks from Hamas, even in previous wars, there are Arab Israelis, Arab Muslims who were killed. There are Arab soldiers who have been killed, who are defending our country. In the aftermath of this, I saw there was a video that was released. It went semi-viral on social media, but there was a huge group of Muslim Israeli soldiers who were on their way. They got drafted, they got called up, and they were on their way to protect their country, and they were playing Arabic music really loud. And it's just, I think it really, really speaks to Israel's democratic nature and the fact that, yes, we're a Jewish state, but we're also a democratic state. And these are things that we are willing to fight for and potentially even die for because we don't have another choice.
No. Yeah. Thanks, Emily. What about you, Ashira? A-hole of the week. Let's just lighten it up for a little bit.
Just one.
I mean, I've been saying to people are like, how are you? I'm like, when I'm not working, I'm crying in a ball in my bed. So that's why I'm working nonstop, because that's the only option not to completely
collapse.
Not to collapse. Ashira, what? A-hole of the week.
It's between Andrew Tate and Instagram.
Oh, tell me about it.
Boy,
So
It's Andrew Tate.
Andrew
Sorry.
Tate.
I'm not a millennial girl. Sorry.
you don't want to know.
Tell me about him.
He's a misogynist, and he's
Sex trafficker.
Yeah, but he's the most Googled man on earth, they say. Yes, because he has a very outspoken personality.
Right.
He recently converted to being Muslim,
Okay.
and he said, how do we know that 40 babies were beheaded?
Oh.
How do we know any of this footage that's coming out is real? We are all living in a psyop. They're all tricking you. They're all everything's a conspiracy theory. Everything is not a conspiracy theory. We live in the country. People live here. Soldiers are down there. They see what's happening. So he is my a-hole of the week. And also Instagram. Instagram has been taking down conservative pages. One in particular, Mystery of Jerusalem. They took down her page.
Who?
Mysteries of Jerusalem.
Really?
She has over 100,000 followers. She
Okay.
just shows the beauty of Jerusalem. She happened to be walking through the old city showing Israel's at war. No one's at the hotel. Just showing. That's all she showed. And they took down her whole
Is it
entire
back?
page. It's not back.
So please tell her to speak to me because I have some connections in Meta.
Okay.
And they've actually been quite good
Okay.
about people who, they've got some funny algorithm. I have to tell you, so one day I wasn't on Instagram anymore. And I've got some good friends who are running the show in Meta Israel. And they've been very responsive when I've pointed out people whose accounts should not have been cancelled. So please
Okay.
get to me on that.
Yes.
This happened also to Nate.
Nate Gonzalez,
Yeah.
somebody, actually, I helped him
It's
get
happening
back
to
on.
a few pages
Yes.
now. They're really just
It is.
tearing him down.
I don't think there's somebody there saying, oh, let's cancel it. I think they've got a weird
But you know when there was?
When?
With the Iran protests.
Oh, so tell me.
My account got, I had videos removed, and at one point my account was removed.
When we did the protest or when you
No,
were
at
doing
the beginning of the Masa Amini protests.
Was it hard for
I
you to
did-
get your account back, or?
I reached out through people who had connections. It wasn't easy,
Okay.
but I did ultimately get it back. But then a day or two later, it came out, BBC and other sources discovered that basically the Iranian regime had paid people who were content moderators.
Are you kidding me?
This was all documented. They had paid people to remove certain people's accounts and content related to the Iranian
So
issue.
you think something like this is going on right now?
Well, maybe they're using that $6 billion that the U.S. is giving them to pay people.
It could be.
Well, I want to talk to you about my a-hole of the week, which actually I had about 3 of them, but this morning topped them all.
Oh, boy. Okay.
I was interviewed by BBC Northern Ireland.
Okay.
And in Northern Ireland, it's very interesting because the Catholics have completely co-opted the Palestinian cause and the Protestants have co-opted our cause. And when I was there a few years ago, they showed me these are they do murals. They love murals. They do murals pro-Zionist and then they do we hate Israel, Palestinian murals. And so I was interviewed this morning. There was a debate going on, very pro, very against. And I was then brought in, and the head of the Palestinian Solidarity Movement also gets interviewed. And
they're
he's
quite extreme.
spitting- oh my God, he's spitting vile, honestly, about everything about Israel. And I asked him a very simple question. I said, can I ask you a question? Do you believe in Israel's right to exist? And he says, I will not respond. I do not recognize this woman speaking. So I said, aha, so you don't recognize me as a human being and you don't recognize my country. I think this is the end of the interview. And I put the phone down.
Good for you.
How can you have a discussion with somebody who doesn't even recognize your right to exist? Not me as a person, so he wouldn't acknowledge me speaking
As a human being.
and he wouldn't acknowledge my country. So I said, well, the interview's over because there's nothing to talk about. So that a-hole of the week was this morning, and it kind of shook me because, we all deal with a lot, but somebody literally saying to you, I don't recognize your right. The woman who's talking is in governance in an occupied city. Well, the whole country's occupied to people like him.
Right.
And that's why I asked him a very simple question. Do you recognize my country's right to exist? And of course, the answer was no. And I think that the hidden story behind all of this is that a lot of these protesters and maybe BLM and all these BDS people, they simply don't recognize our right to exist. So there's not even a point to open an argument with them.
Yep. And I think it's crazy because they're so quick to say, oh, well, you're against Palestinians or you're against a Palestinian state. Me personally, I am in favor of two states. I know a lot of people disagree with me. They have different proposals and solutions.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't have a problem with Palestinian self-determination. But even if I did, that has nothing to do with Jewish right to self-determination. It's
Well,
not, they're not dependent on each other and they don't exclude each other.
I think it's
And a lot of people
ironic.
don't get that.
I think it's ironic that we have these social justice warriors for every community. We have it for our Black community. We have it for the Palestinians. We have it for the Hispanics. And then when it comes to the Jewish community, there's no social justice for Jewish people.
No, there shouldn't be. So let's end now our show with something of some hope and positivity, of something heartwarming in this very difficult, horrific times that we're going through, something that warmed your heart, Emily.
Oh, wow. Well, I have to say, I mean, as you know, I've been big on the Iranian issue for a long time.
Yeah.
The response from the Iranian community has been mind-blowing.
The diaspora, the Iranian diaspora?
Both Iranians inside of Iran and the diaspora. I mean, they have organized themselves protests in favor of Israel all over the world. And where they haven't, they've joined the Jewish community in California, multiple places in Canada, in Lisbon, London, Paris, all kinds of cities all over in Germany. It's amazing. My mind is blown, like seeing the old flag of Iran, not the current one of the regime, side by side with the Israeli flag. They're doing interviews speaking about how they stand with Israel. Iranians stand with Israel was trending on Twitter. And then there's a whole campaign in Persian of Iranians inside of Iran recording messages of like love and support for Israelis in Persian, and they're sending them to the anti-regime media. They'll draw Israeli flags because they don't really have them there.
Which, by the way, is pretty brave when they know they could get flung in jail, tortured, and killed.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story.
These people are ready to fight for our country. That's how much they care about Israel. And, the West, I'm an American too, and I'm happy to see that President Biden was so supportive.
Yes.
But I don't think anybody understands what's going on like the people of Iran. Because they've dealt with that regime, and that regime is behind this attack. Hamas is terrible. They're a terror organization, but without the 70, 80, 90, whatever million dollars, annually that they receive from the Islamic Republic.
And the training and everything else they get from them. People don't seem to understand that. Ashira, please, let's finish with something positive. What's your positive, heartwarming story
I
of the
have
week?
two.
Okay.
I'm always coming with two things. As an observant religious woman, I was very warmed at seeing that the restaurants in Tel Aviv started to kosher their kitchens so that they could feed soldiers who are religious and keep kosher.
Wow.
I had no idea.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
That's
and
amazing.
I thought that was so beautiful. And then I seen a video of a man going to give food to a soldier, and he said, "I don't want food. I just want tzitzit." And the man said, "I only have the ones that I'm wearing." And he said, "Can I have them?" And he gave it to them. For those of you who don't know, tzitzit is a four-corner garment that Jewish men wear. And it has strings on them to represent the 613 commandments. So as we, as a Jewish people, guard the 613 commandments, God will guard us and protect our nation. So it's just been heartwarming to see that all the soldiers are getting tzitzit and putting them on, even if they're not religious, if they're Hillel,
It doesn't matter.
They're just putting them on because they're Jewish and they're proud. So
That's amazing. I think that I'm most impressed, and we shouldn't be, because this is who we are as a people, at the organization, the civil society, just coming together to organize from hotels for people from the south in Jerusalem, housing people from the south, from food banks, from sending down even the most basic products for soldiers like toothbrushes and toothpaste. The amount of people, I think the whole country involved in doing something for our soldiers, for the cause, for the victims, for the families of the hostages, that to me is Am Israel. This is exactly who we are.
And it's coming on the heels of such intense political division. We've had so many debates in the last couple of months. So to see this
for 6 months.
It's just, well, you know what? There's really not much positive that we can talk about, but if there's one thing that perhaps has come from this, and it's shame on us that it had to take this horrific massacre, that it has created unity in the country, but we hope this unity stays, that God continues to protect us, that we continue to protect our soldiers, that we get our hostages back, and that this war comes to a swift end, and that we end this horrific regime that is set out to do one thing only, and that is to destroy the state of Israel. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you, ladies. Just want to say that Vivian Bercovici is not with us because she is in Canada, and the reason she's in Canada, she got stuck there. She was supposed to come back. She is actually organizing an unprecedented campaign to bring back Canadians that got stuck here back to Canada, and doing this all on her own as a private person, not with any help of her government. And she'll talk about that in the next episode. But we miss you, Vivian, and the quad is not a quad without you. So thank you so much, ladies, and we'll talk very soon.
Thanks. Thank you.